It's the new era of college football, the new landscape. I get that, but I also know that it's headed in the wrong direction and it's going at warp speed. Former University of Tennessee quarterback Nico Iamaleava is the poster child and the byproduct of an absolute shit show that is now college football. This is QB Unfiltered, my take. The NCAA has lost the plot with college football.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
By now I'm sure that you guys are aware that former Tennessee quarterback Nico, that's going to go with his first name from here on out, and his dad / advisory crew thought it would be a great idea for him to boycott meetings and the final practice and spring ball before the spring game in order to get a pay raise, a bump in pay. He was going to boycott, sit out, miss the spring game to get more cash. At which point, head coach Josh Heupel did the exact right thing. He told Nico and his dad, hit the bricks. Now, as soon as he was out of Knoxville, word came out that they were shopping his name to places like the University of Miami, Notre Dame, University of Oregon, and those coaches also made the right call. In fact, Mario Cristobal, the head coach for Miami, said this, quote, if they want to play holdout, they might as well play get out, right? It was also reported that when Dan Lanning, the head coach for Oregon, was asked about Nico, he said, we want nothing to do with it. We're not even going to touch it. Kudos to those guys. It was always going to be interesting to me to see which head coach and which program was going to open their arms to this kid and say, yeah, you and your dad and advisory crew, come on in, join our program. And so it really wasn't a surprise to me when the UCLA Bruins jumped. This is the wild, wild west. And if the current system isn't drastically adjusted, then the once great game and everything college football stood for is toast. And, I keep reading on social media and other, gurus and pontificators who are saying, well, don't blame Nico. It's the system. It is the system, and the system stinks. But Nico is one selfish dude. And him and his advisory crew, those guys are trouble. Just like a lot of other quarterbacks and their advisors are that are floating around and flip-flopping and crisscrossing teams as we go through this transfer portal period and the insanity that is 2025 college football. I did a show on this channel a couple of years ago where I talked about the scenarios that were going to come out down the road where you had dads or uncles or brothers or cousins that were going to act as agents, and they were going to have sit downs with the head coaches of these college football teams where they were going to lay out their demands and they were going to talk money and they were going to make threats and they were going to negotiate. Every one of those scenarios that I painted out 2 years ago has come true 100%. One of the more amazing things that came out of the Tennessee debacle is that it's been reported that Nico and his father threatened to sit out the national playoffs this past season if his NIL money was not adjusted. Can you believe that? If that actually went down, if that statement actually either came out of Nico's mouth or his father's mouth, if they actually said that and verbalized it, Josh Heupel should have said, get your shit, pack it up, and go. You get your number 2 guy ready to play in the playoffs and you move on. That is unbelievable. There were also reports that came out of Knoxville that said that Nico's father had made demands of Heupel and his staff that they needed to bring in better offensive linemen to play and protect his son. Are you freaking kidding me? And you want to know why the greatest college football coach of all time, Nick Saban, is sitting on his boat somewhere in Alabama drinking Coronas? This is exactly why. This whole debacle and drama at Tennessee and now at UCLA, this is what college football has become. Joey Aguilar transfers from Appalachian State after the season to UCLA, right? He's going to be the guy. So they say. Nico holds out from the spring game at Tennessee because he wants more money, right? Heupel tells him, take a hike. Nico ends up at UCLA where Aguilar now jumps back in the portal and transfers out of Westwood without ever playing a game for the Bruins. And amazingly shows up in Knoxville, Tennessee. So, again, it's the system, but I just have a problem as a former coach bringing a quarterback into my program who doesn't want to compete, right? I get a problem with that. And Heupel is a former quarterback and he's a stand-up guy. I like him. I like his philosophy a lot. It's just this transfer portal thing with these guys bouncing around and stuff. And I'm wondering if he made any demands of Heupel when he was negotiating with Tennessee to transfer in and play for him, as far as, don't bring anybody else in to compete with me. I want to be the guy. I want to be guaranteed to be the guy next year. I somehow don't think that happened. I don't think that Josh Heupel would put up with that kind of crap, but you never know. As far as college football losing the plot, former Penn Stater and current Dallas Cowboys defensive end Micah Parsons, he probably put this better than I've seen anybody put it as far as what college football is all about and where we're at with it right now. Let me read you some of the stuff that he said. Micah Parsons, quote, college football is a joke right now. Just make it into a semi-pro league. College was never about money. College is about building character. I'm the man I am today because of the brotherhood and amazing coaches I had during my time at Penn State. We are failing kids now because life isn't easy and we are allowing them to quit, unquote. That is 100% spot on. Okay, now, back before this circus began, back in the good old days, dudes signed with the school. And I'm not saying that there weren't transfers. There were transfers. But back in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and into the 2000s, right, you had two scenarios when you transferred. The first one is if you went from 4-year to 4-year, you had to sit out a year on the campus you transferred to before you were eligible to play again, right? The second scenario was a 4-2-4 scenario, which meant if you transferred from a 4-year school, in order to be eligible immediately at the school you're transferring to, you had to go to a junior college, get your AA degree, and then go play at the 4-year level. 4-2-4 transfer. Also back in those days, once you signed up as a full-time student, you had 5 years to play 4. Those days are history too, because now you've got guys that are playing 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, and in some cases 8 years. And I think that there's a couple of dudes floating around out there in college football that have maybe eked out and squeaked out 9 years of being in college and playing football, which is totally amazing. And back in the old days, before it was a circus, and what the whole thing is now is money, 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 right? Well, in the old days, when you signed a full scholarship, what the money broke down to was you were receiving anywhere from $150,000 to $400,000 worth of a 4-year scholarship, which included room, board, tuition, and fees. That's a pretty good chunk of change. And if you were good enough to play past college, then you went to the NFL and you made your money. Now, I played Division I. I played 1AA. I know how the game works, and I knew how the game worked back then. The best players always got a little bit of a supplement, a little bit of money somehow, some way, right? Wink, wink. That stuff happened, and the system worked, and it worked because you had kids that were basically staying in the same programs for 4 or 5 years that were, like I said, if they were good enough to play in the NFL, that's what they did. If they weren't good enough to play in the NFL, hopefully they got that college degree, which then enabled them to go out into society and get a job that they wanted to work at and that they were good at and that they were trained to do. It also meant, whether you went to the NFL or didn't, that you came into college as an immature young man, and because you were in one program, maybe two programs, right, for your 5-year career, and you were in a good, positive, strong culture, that you got all the benefits of maturing, growing into a man. And so that when you left college and went out into society, you were a better husband. You were a better father. You were a better contributing member of society. And that's what college football and college athletics used to provide these young men. That is no longer the case, right? I said this about a year and a half ago on one of these shows, that University of Michigan 2 years ago, I think, is going to be the last college football team to win a national championship that's going to be comprised of a culture-built 4th and 5th year senior group of players. We're not going to see that moving forward unless things get changed dramatically. And make no mistake about this, guys, this is no longer about name, image, and likeness. Nope. This is pay for play. This is no longer college football. This is the NFL. What's coming next for college football? You're going to see the formation of a players association and a players union so that they can negotiate playing conditions within the programs. That's going to be a beauty. You're going to see load management. Mark my words, that is coming. Pretty much everything you see in the NFL. And that's sad. And anytime you bring money into athletics, the quality of the game suffers. And that's a fact. And this NIL stuff, this pay for play scenario that we have in college football right now, this is a form of player empowerment. And as I've said in other shows, player empowerment is the kiss of death for team sports. It really is. You know, I'm going to end this thing with 2 topics here. The first one really irritates my ass, and the second one is a positive, great story. Let's start with the ass irritation. I've had it up to here with these dudes that are penning these love letters to the fans, to their university, to the school that they play at, and they put it on social media. And I just want to thank the fan base of X University and the coaching staff. Man, I've got great respect for them, and I've learned so much. And my teammates who have supported me along the way. It's been awesome. Thank you so much. But with that being said, I'm jumping in the transfer portal. Sincerely, fill in the blank. We don't need any virtue signaling. Just jump in the portal, pack your bags, and go. Okay, let's end this with a positive slant on this whole deal with college football. There are some dudes that do this right, and I'm talking about high-profile quarterbacks that do this right. There is a kid in Austin, Texas right now. His name's Arch Manning. I'm sure you've heard of him. He's got a famous last name. And I did a show on him about a year ago where I said, you know, Arch Manning is the smartest quarterback in college football. And I laid out my reasons why. And I'll go over those real briefly right now. He was the most highly sought after quarterback coming out of high school 2 years ago. He signed with Texas, right, to go play for Steve Sarkisian. There's positive number 1 for him. Sarkisian was a hell of a college quarterback. He basically coaches the quarterbacks. He calls the offense, as well as being the head coach for the Longhorns, but a great mentor and teacher for any quarterback, right? He knew going into Texas that Quinn Ewers was there. He went in and he shirted his first year, which is perfect. That's exactly what you should do. Get acclimated to college life. Get physically stronger, mentally smarter, learn from the guys in front of you, Quinn Ewers, get coached up by Sarkisian, right? That's year 1. And then year 2, Quinn Ewers is the man, and Arch Manning does not jump in the portal. What does he do? He stays in Austin. He's the number 2 quarterback. He gets in when Ewers went down with an injury, so he's got good game experience, right? And he continued to get physically stronger, mentally smarter, continued to learn under Sark, continued to learn under Ewers. 2 years in Austin, Texas, not the number 1 quarterback, didn't jump in the portal, didn't boycott practices and meetings, didn't threaten to sit out of the playoffs, none of that bullshit. And now next year, his 3rd year at the University of Texas, he's going to step in and be the guy, and he's going to rock and roll for them. Brilliant decision by him. That's the way it should be done. As I said, he's the smartest guy in college football. And you talk about an advisory committee. Who are the guys that are giving him advice? Well, he's got his 2 uncles, Peyton Manning and Eli Manning, and he's got his grandfather, Archie Manning. And those guys are giving him the right advice. And that was go shirt, compete your 2nd year. If you're the backup, you're the backup, but then you're going to be the man. You're going to get your NIL money, and then you're going to get paid big time when you go into the NFL, and you're going to be a dude. Okay, so as I see it, the adults are going to have to come back into the room. They're going to have to adjust this thing greatly. College football was the greatest sporting event and organization that there was, in my opinion, because it was pure. It was pure. The players were in it for the right reasons, and the product was awesome. Iconic conferences, iconic bowl games. January 1st was the best football day of the year. All gone. All gone. And the NIL and the portal now is the anvil around the neck of college football as they lean forward off of that cliff. Things have got to change. Hopefully they will. Okay. If you like my opinion on quarterback play, college football, the NFL, offenses, the passing game, coaches, unvarnished opinions, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, QB Unfiltered. I really appreciate the support. Okay, this is QB Unfiltered, and remember, always throw the ball short to guys who can score. See ya.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.